In the harsh and unforgiving territories of Arizona, where justice often comes at the end of a gun, and mercy is a luxury few can afford, an extraordinary story of redemption is about to unfold. Two Apache sisters, torn from everything they've ever known, will discover that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected source. A man haunted by his own past will make a choice that defies everything society expects of him. This is a story about the true meaning of family, the price of freedom, and how love can bloom even in the darkest soil of human cruelty. Before we begin this powerful journey, let us know in the comments what country you're watching from. We love connecting with our global community. And dust kicked up by 50 horses and wagons hung in the air like a brown curtain over the makeshift auction ground outside Tombstone. October 3rd, 1881, a date that would burn itself into my memory forever. I hadn't planned to be there that day, but business had kept me in town longer than expected, and curiosity got the better of me when I heard the commotion. What I saw when I reached the crowd made my blood run cold. It wasn't cattle being sold, as I'd assumed. It was people. My name is Marcus Coleman, though most folks call me Cole. I'm 42 years old, and I've seen enough of this world's cruelty to last several lifetimes. I served as a cavalry officer during the Apache Wars, fought in battles that still haunt my dreams, and lost my wife Sarah to consumption 3 years ago. Since then, I've lived alone on my ranch in Red Canyon, trying to make peace with a past that refuses to stay buried. But nothing in my experience had prepared me for what I witnessed that afternoon. The auctioneer, a greasy man named Ezra Blackwood, stood on a makeshift platform, hawking human beings like livestock. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out in his oily voice, "we have some fine specimens today. Strong backs, good for ranch work, mining, whatever your needs might be." The crowd was a mix of rough-looking men, miners, ranchers, and others whose intentions I didn't want to contemplate. They examined the captives like they were inspecting horses, checking teeth and muscles, discussing their potential uses in voices that turned my stomach. Most of the prisoners were Apache, taken in recent raids or captured during skirmishes. Men, women, even some children, all chained together and displayed like merchandise. The sight should have been illegal, but Sheriff Stone was right there in the crowd, not as law enforcement, but as a potential buyer. Then I saw them. 2 young Apache women stood near the end of the line, and something about them immediately caught my attention. They were clearly sisters. They had the same high cheekbones, the same proud bearing, despite their circumstances. The older one, maybe 26 years old, stood protectively in front of the younger, who couldn't have been more than 19. What struck me most was their defiance. While other captives showed varying degrees of resignation or terror, these two stood tall. The older sister's eyes burned with a fury that seemed barely contained, while the younger one's gaze held a dignity that no amount of degradation could touch. "Ah, now here we have something special," Blackwood announced as he approached the sisters. 2 Apache squaws, sisters I'm told. "Look at these fine specimens, young, strong, and I guarantee they'll work hard with the proper motivation." The lewd chuckles from the crowd made me clench my fists. "The older one's got some fire in her," Blackwood continued, staying well back from the woman's reach. "Might need some breaking in, but I assure you she'll be worth the effort. The younger one's more docile, perfect for household duties." He was talking about them like they were animals, and the casual cruelty of it made me sick to my core. "We'll start the bidding at $50 for the pair." Hands shot up around the crowd. 60, 75, 100. I watched in horror as the bidding escalated. These weren't ranchers looking for workers. These were men with darker intentions, and I could see it in their faces. The older sister turned her head and caught my eye. For a moment, we stared at each other across the crowd, and I saw something in her gaze that hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't a plea for help. This woman was too proud to beg. It was more like a challenge, a question. Are you going to stand there and watch, or are you going to do something? 150, called out a heavy-set man I recognized as Jake Morrison, a mine owner with a reputation for working his employees to death. 175. This from Tom Crawford, whose treatment of women was notorious throughout the territory. The bidding continued to climb, and with each increase my anger grew. These were human beings, not property to be bought and sold. The younger sister had begun to tremble slightly, though she still held her head high, while the older one's jaw was set in a line of grim determination. $250, Crawford shouted, and the crowd fell silent. It was more money than most people in the territory saw in 6 months. Blackwood looked around expectantly. Going once? Going twice? I don't know what possessed me in that moment. Maybe it was the memory of my own sister, who died when we were children. Maybe it was guilt over my role in the Apache Wars, or maybe it was simply the fundamental wrongness of what I was witnessing. $300, I heard myself say. Every head in the crowd turned toward me. Blackwood's eyes lit up with greed, while Crawford glared at me with open hostility. Well, well, Blackwood said with a grin. Cole Coleman enters the bidding. 300 from the gentleman in the back. Crawford's face was red with anger. 325. 350, I replied without hesitation. 400, Crawford snarled. The crowd was murmuring now, excited by the bidding war. I looked again at the two sisters and saw the older one still watching me, trying to figure out what my intentions were. $500, I said clearly. The crowd gasped. It was an enormous sum, more than many people earned in a year. Crawford looked like he wanted to continue bidding, but even his greed had limits. Going once, going twice, sold. Blackwood banged his gavel. The Apache sisters go to Mr. Coleman for $500. As I pushed through the crowd to complete the transaction, I could hear the whispers following me. What's Cole want with 2 squaws? Thought he was still mourning his wife. Man's got particular tastes, I reckon. I ignored them all and approached Blackwood, who was practically rubbing his hands together with glee. Congratulations, Mr. Coleman. Excellent choice. These 2 will serve you well, I'm sure. I handed over the money without a word, then turned to look at my purchases. The word stuck in my throat. I'd just bought 2 human beings. The fact that I'd done it to save them from worse fates didn't make it any less horrifying. The sisters stood watching me with unreadable expressions. The older one's chains had been unlocked from the main line, but her hands were still bound, as were her sisters. What are your names? I asked in what little Apache I remembered from my military days. The older sister's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but she didn't answer. I asked your names, I repeated in English. I am Kaya Nightwind, the older sister said finally, her voice steady despite her circumstances. This is my sister Ayana. Well, Kaya and Ayana, I said, we have a long ride ahead of us. As we walked toward my wagon, I could feel the weight of their stares and the crowd's whispers. Sheriff Stone approached as I was helping the sisters into the wagon bed. Coleman, he said with a smirk, hope you know what you're doing. Apache women can be unpredictable. I can handle myself, Sheriff. Just remember, they're your property now. Anything happens, any trouble they cause, it's on your head. Property. The word made my skin crawl, but I nodded and climbed onto the wagon seat. As we rolled out of Tombstone, I caught Kaya's reflection in the side mirror. She was whispering urgently to her sister in Apache, probably trying to figure out what fate awaited them. I couldn't blame them for being terrified. We rode in silence for the first hour, the only sounds being the wagon wheels and the horses' hooves. Finally, Ayana spoke up in hesitant English. Where are you taking us? I looked back at them, these 2 young women whose lives I'd just purchased for $500, and made a decision that would change everything. Home, I said simply. I'm taking you home. I saw confusion in their eyes, but also the first glimmer of something that might have been hope. They didn't understand yet what I meant, but they would soon enough. The Red Canyon Ranch sat in a valley surrounded by red stone cliffs that gave the place its name. It was a good spread, 2,000 acres of decent grazing land, a sturdy house, and all the outbuildings a working ranch needed. I'd built it with Sarah, dreaming of the family we'd raise there. Now it felt too big and too empty for one man. As we approached the house, Rosa Martinez, my housekeeper, came out to see what was happening. Rosa was a widow in her 50s who'd worked for Sarah and me for almost 10 years. She took one look at the 2 Apache women in the back of my wagon and crossed herself. "Dios mío, Señor Cole, what have you done?" "Something I should have done a long time ago," I said, climbing down from the wagon. I walked around to the back and reached up to help Kaya down. She hesitated for a moment, then accepted my hand. Her skin was warm despite the cool October air, and I could feel the strength in her grip. Ayana was more trusting, allowing me to lift her down without resistance. Both women stood uncertainly in my yard, still bound and clearly unsure of what was expected of them. "Rosa," I said, "could you prepare the guest rooms, and maybe find some proper clothes for our guests?" "Guests?" Rosa's eyebrows shot up. "That's right, guests." I turned to Kaya and Ayana, who were watching this exchange with growing confusion. "Let me make something clear," I said, looking each of them in the eye. "You are not my property. You are not my slaves. What happened in Tombstone was wrong, and I'm sorry it happened to you." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a knife, causing both women to tense. But instead of threatening them, I moved to cut their bonds. "You are free to leave whenever you want," I continued as I sliced through the ropes. "But if you choose to stay, you'll be treated as members of this household, with all the respect and dignity that entails." As the ropes fell away, Kaya rubbed her wrists and stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you buy us, if not to use us?" "Because," I said, the words coming from a place deep in my heart that I'd thought was dead. "Sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do." That night, as I sat in my study looking out at the red cliffs in the moonlight, I wondered what I'd gotten myself into. I'd just brought 2 Apache women into my home, in a territory where anti-Indian sentiment ran high. I'd spent $500 I couldn't really afford, and I had no idea if my gesture would even be appreciated or understood. But when I thought about the alternative, about what would have happened to Kaya and Ayana if I hadn't intervened, I knew I'd made the only choice I could live with. The question now was whether I could keep them safe, and whether they would ever be able to trust the man who had, technically, bought them like cattle. Time would tell. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I had a purpose beyond just existing from one day to the next. Chapter 2. I woke before dawn, as was my habit, but the house felt different somehow. There were other people under my roof for the first time since Sarah died, and the knowledge sat strangely with me. As I made coffee in the kitchen, I could hear quiet voices upstairs, Rosa speaking in rapid Spanish mixed with broken Apache, and the sisters responding in hushed tones. When Rosa came downstairs an hour later, her expression was troubled. "Señor Cole, we need to talk." "What's wrong?" "Those girls. They've been through hell. The younger one, Ayana, she barely speaks. Won't say what happened to them before the auction. And Kaya," Rosa shook her head, "that woman is like a cornered wolf. She doesn't trust anyone, especially not a white man." "Can you blame her?" "No, I cannot. But Señor Cole, you need to understand what you've gotten yourself into. They think this is some kind of trick, that you're waiting for them to let their guard down before you. Well, before you show your true intentions, the thought that they saw me as just another threat made my chest tight. What can I do to convince them otherwise?" "Time, patience, and prayer," Rosa said. "Maybe lots of prayer." I was feeding the horses when Kaya appeared at the stable door. She'd changed into one of the dresses Rosa had found for her, but she still moved like a warrior, alert and ready for danger. "You speak some Apache," she said without preamble. "A little. I learned during my time in the cavalry. You fought against my people." It wasn't a question, and there was no point in denying it. "Yes, I did." "How many did you kill?" The directness of the question caught me off guard, but I owed her honesty. I don't know. It was war. Men died on both sides. Women and children too? I never killed women or children, never. She studied my face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether I was lying. Why should I believe you? Because I'm telling you the truth. And because if I meant you harm, I wouldn't have bothered cutting your ropes last night. Maybe you just prefer your victims willing. The accusation hit me like a slap, but I kept my voice calm. Maybe, or maybe I'm exactly what I told you I was. A man trying to do the right thing. And what is the right thing, Cole Coleman? What do you expect from us? Nothing. I expect nothing from you except to be treated with the same respect I show you. Respect, she laughed bitterly. You bought us, like horses or cattle. How is that respect? It's not. What happened in Tombstone was wrong, and I'm sorry for it. But I can't undo it. All I can do is try to make things right from here on. Kaya was quiet for a moment, watching me brush down my horse. My sister thinks you might be different, she said finally. She's always been too trusting. And what do you think? I think white men are good at saying pretty words when it serves their purpose. Fair enough. I'd have to prove myself through actions, not words. Where are you from originally? I asked, changing the subject. The Chiricahua Mountains. Our band lived there for generations before. She stopped herself. Before what? Before men like you decided we didn't belong there anymore. Over the next few days, a fragile routine developed. Rosa took charge of helping the sisters settle in, finding them clothes and showing them around the house. Ayana, the younger sister, gradually began to open up, especially to Rosa, whose maternal nature seemed to draw her out. Kaya remained distant and suspicious, but I caught her watching me sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking. She was evaluating me, trying to figure out my angle, waiting for me to reveal my true intentions. The first real test came on the fourth day, when Sheriff Stone rode up to the house with 2 deputies. "Coleman!" he called out as I stepped onto the porch. "We need to talk!" I could see Kaya and Ayana watching from an upstairs window, and I hoped they couldn't sense the tension I felt. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" "Got reports of trouble with your new acquisitions. Neighbor says he saw one of them trying to steal chickens from his coop." It was a lie, and we both knew it. My nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and neither sister had left my property. "That's interesting, Sheriff, considering they haven't been off my land." "You calling me a liar, Coleman?" "I'm saying your information is incorrect." Stone's eyes narrowed. "I'm going to need to search your property. Make sure you're keeping those savages under proper control." "You have a warrant?" "Don't need one for runaway property. They're not runaways. They're my guests." "Guests?" Stone laughed. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Before I could respond, Kaya appeared on the porch beside me. She'd moved so quietly I hadn't heard her approach. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her English clear and precise. Stone looked her up and down with obvious distaste. Well, the savage speaks English. How civilized." I felt Kaya tense beside me, but her voice remained calm. "I speak 3 languages, actually. English, Spanish, and Apache. How many do you speak, Sheriff?" Stone's face reddened. "Watch your tongue, squaw, or you'll find yourself back on the auction block." "That's enough," I said, stepping forward. "State your business, or get off my property." "My business is making sure the peace is kept. These Apache have been raiding ranches, stealing cattle, killing good Christian folk. How do I know these 2 aren't scouting for their warrior friends?" "Because they've been here under my supervision since Tuesday, unless you're accusing me of aiding raiders." The accusation hung in the air between us. Stone might be corrupt, but he wasn't stupid enough to directly accuse a respected rancher without evidence. "Just keep them on a tight leash, Coleman. Any trouble, and I'll hold you responsible." After they left, Kaya and I stood on the porch in silence for several minutes. "Thank you," she said finally. "For what?" "For not handing us over. It would have been easier for you. I don't do things because they're easy." She looked at me with something that might have been the beginning of respect. "Why did you really buy us, Cole? And don't tell me it was just to do the right thing." Men don't spend $500 on strangers just for righteousness. I'd been asking myself the same question for days, and I finally had an answer. Because, I said slowly, 3 years ago, I lost everything that mattered to me. My wife, our unborn child, my sense of purpose. I've been living like a dead man ever since. When I saw you and your sister on that platform, saw the way you stood proud despite everything, I saw something I thought I'd lost forever. What? Hope. The possibility that broken things can be fixed, that lost things can be found again. That evening, Ayana joined me on the porch, while Kaya helped Rosa with dinner. The younger sister had been gradually becoming more comfortable around me, though she still rarely spoke, unless spoken to. "My sister doesn't trust easily," she said in her soft voice. "I've noticed. She has good reason. The men who captured us, they were not kind." The simple statement carried a weight of pain that made my hands clench into fists. "I'm sorry that happened to you. Kaya protected me. She always protects me. But sometimes the things we do to survive, they change us." I looked at this young woman, barely out of her teens, who spoke with the wisdom of someone who'd seen too much of the world's cruelty. "What do you want to do now, Ayana? Where do you want to go?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "Our people are scattered. Our village was destroyed. Some went to the reservation, others fled to Mexico. We have no family left except each other." "Then stay here, both of you, for as long as you want." "Why? What do you gain from having us here?" It was a fair question, and one I was still figuring out myself. Maybe I gain the chance to be a better man than I was. Maybe I gain the opportunity to make amends for some of the harm I've done. And maybe, she said with a small smile, we all gain a family. The word hit me harder than I expected. Family. It was something I'd given up hope of ever having again. That night I lay in bed thinking about the conversation. Was it possible? Could we really become some kind of family, despite everything that divided us? The idea seemed both wonderful and terrifying. From across the hall, I could hear Kaya and Ayana talking quietly in Apache. I couldn't understand the words, but there was something comforting about the sound of voices in my house again. For the first time since Sarah died, I fell asleep feeling like I wasn't completely alone in the world, but I knew the real challenges were still ahead. Sheriff Stone wouldn't be the last person to cause trouble over my decision to shelter the sisters, and I still had to prove to Kaya that I was worthy of the trust she was so reluctant to give. The question was, would I be strong enough to protect them when the real test came? Because something told me it was coming, and sooner than any of us expected. 2 weeks later, the real test arrived in the form of Ezra Blackwood and 3 armed men riding up to my ranch just after sunrise. I was in the barn when Rosa came running, her face pale with fear. "Senor Cole, the slave trader is here with gunmen!" My blood turned to ice. I grabbed my rifle and headed for the house, where I could see Kaya and Ayana watching from an upstairs window. "Stay inside," I called to them. "No matter what happens, don't come out." Blackwood sat on his horse in my yard, grinning like a snake. His companions were rough-looking men with the bearing of hired killers. "Coleman," he called out cheerfully, "hope you don't mind the early visit. State your business and get off my land." Now, no need for hostility. I'm here about a business matter. You see, there's been a complaint about your recent purchase." "What kind of complaint?" "Well, it seems those Apache girls you bought belong to someone else. Prior claim, you might say. I kept my rifle ready, but not directly threatening." "That's impossible. You sold them to me fair and square." "Ah, but here's the thing. Turns out I never had legal right to sell them. They were captured by a bounty hunter named Jake Morrison, who was transporting them to a military prison. They escaped during transfer, and I found them and assumed they were fair game. It was a lie, and we both knew it. But it was the kind of lie that could cause me serious legal trouble if the right people believed it. Morrison here has come to collect his property," Blackwood continued, gesturing to one of his men. Morrison was a big, ugly man with cruel eyes. Those squaws cost me time and money tracking down. I want them back, plus compensation for my trouble. How much compensation? I asked, playing for time. Let's say $1,000, plus the return of the merchandise. It was extortion, pure and simple. They wanted the sisters back, probably to sell them again, and they wanted to squeeze more money out of me in the process. And if I refuse? Well, Blackwood said with mock sadness, that would be theft of military prisoners. Sheriff Stone would have to arrest you. Terrible shame, really. At that moment, Kaya appeared on the porch behind me. I'd told her to stay inside, but she never was one to take orders. You're lying, she said calmly. We were never military prisoners. Morrison's face twisted with lust and anger. Shut your mouth, squaw, before I shut it for you. Try it, Kaya said, her hand moving to the knife at her belt, one I'd given her for protection. The situation was escalating dangerously. 4 armed men against me, with innocent women in the crossfire. Here's my counteroffer, I said. You have 10 seconds to get off my property before I start shooting. Blackwood laughed. You're outnumbered, Coleman. Be reasonable. 5 seconds. You can't fight all of us. I raised my rifle, aiming at Blackwood's chest. Try me. For a tense moment, nobody moved. Then the sound of approaching horses broke the standoff. Doc Franklin, the town physician, rode into the yard with 2 men I recognized as federal marshals. Gentlemen, Doc Franklin called out, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Blackwood's confidence wavered. Federal marshals trumped local corruption every time. Doc, I said, keeping my rifle trained on Blackwood. Perfect timing. Mr. Blackwood, one of the marshals said, we've been looking for you. For me. Whatever for. Trafficking in illegal slavery. Kidnapping. Running auctions without federal permits. The marshal's voice was flat, professional. You're under arrest. As the marshals took Blackwood and his men into custody, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Doc Franklin dismounted and approached the porch. Sorry it took so long, he said quietly. Had to ride to Tucson to find federal authority. Local law wouldn't touch this. How did you know? Rosa sent word. Smart woman, that housekeeper of yours. I looked at Rosa, who was standing in the doorway with a satisfied expression. I sent my nephew to find help, she explained. These men, they have evil in their hearts. After the marshals left with their prisoners, Doc Franklin stayed for coffee. He examined both sisters at my request, finding old injuries that spoke of the violence they'd endured. They're strong, he told me privately, but they've been through hell, the younger one especially. She's been hurt in ways that will take time to heal. What do you mean? Doc's expression was grim. Use your imagination, Cole, and be patient with them. Trust doesn't come easy after what they've experienced. That evening, Kaya found me on the porch, staring out at the red cliffs in the fading light. Thank you, she said, sitting in the chair beside me. For what this time? For standing up to those men. For risking your life to protect us. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said firmly, they wouldn't have. Most white men would have handed us over to avoid trouble. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Can I ask you something? Kaya said. When you were a soldier fighting my people, did you ever question whether it was right? Me, it was a hard question, one I'd been asking myself for years. Toward the end, yes, I began to see that we were fighting people who just wanted to protect their homes and families. People not so different from us. What changed your mind? I met an Apache warrior during a parley. His name was Nal Nish. He spoke perfect English, had been educated at a mission school. We talked for hours about our families, our hopes for the future. I realized he wasn't a savage or a monster. He was just a man trying to protect what he loved. What happened to him? He died in the next battle, shot by one of my men while trying to surrender. Kaya was quiet for a long moment. Is that why you saved us? Guilt over the past? Partly. But also because it was the right thing to do, and because... I hesitated. Because what? Because you and Ayana remind me that there's still good in this world worth protecting. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Chief Joseph Nightwind, a dignified Apache leader, rode into my yard alone and unarmed. Kaya and Ayana ran to greet him with tears of joy. "Uncle!" Ayana cried, embracing him. He spoke to them rapidly in Apache, then turned to me with curious eyes. "You are the white man who bought my nieces?" "Yes, but I freed them immediately." "So I hear. Why?" "Because no human being should be owned by another." Chief Nightwind studied me carefully. "You fought against our people." "I did, and I regret it. Yet now you protect Apache women at great risk to yourself. It's what any decent person would do." "No," the chief said. "It is what a good man would do. There is a difference." He spoke with his nieces for an hour in Apache, then approached me again. "They wish to stay with you," he said. "Both of them. They say you have given them something they thought they had lost forever." "What's that?" "Hope and a home." He paused. "I give you my blessing, Cole Coleman, but know this. If you ever betray their trust, if you ever harm them, I will come for you myself." "I understand." "Good. Then welcome to the family." As Chief Nightwind rode away, I stood in my yard with Kaya and Ayana beside me, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging. "So," I said to the sisters, "what do we do now?" Kaya smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. "Now, we build a life together, a real family." Ayana took my hand and squeezed it gently. "Home," she said simply. And for the first time since Sarah died, I truly felt like I was home again. Chapter 4. Spring came early to Red Canyon that year, bringing with it a sense of renewal that seemed to touch everything on the ranch. 3 months had passed since the sisters came to live with me, and the changes were remarkable. The house that had felt like a tomb for 3 years was now alive with laughter, conversation, and the warmth of family. Ayana had blossomed like a desert flower after rain. Her English had improved dramatically, and she'd taken over much of the cooking, bringing Apache techniques that created the most flavorful meals I'd ever tasted. She sang while she worked, traditional songs that filled the house with music. Kaya had proven to be a natural with horses and cattle. Her Apache upbringing had taught her to read animals in ways that amazed me. She could calm a spooked horse with a touch and spot a sick cow from 100 yards away. More importantly, the walls she'd built around her heart were slowly coming down. But it was the morning of March 15th that everything changed forever. I was in the corral working with a young stallion when Rosa came running from the house, her face glowing with excitement. "Senor Cole, come quickly, there's news!" I found Kaya and Ayana in the kitchen, both holding a telegram and crying. For a moment my heart stopped, fearing bad news. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong," Kaya said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Everything's right. More right than we ever dared hope." Ayana handed me the telegram with shaking hands. It was from a lawyer in Washington, D.C. To Kaya and Ayana Nightwind, stop regarding, Apache land rights settlement. Stop your family claim recognized by federal court. Stop compensation awarded for stolen lands. Stop amount $35,000. Stop please contact immediately stop. I read it twice, hardly believing the words. $35,000, I said. That's a fortune. Our grandfather filed a claim 20 years ago, Kaya explained. Before he died, he told us about it, but we never thought anything would come of it. The government rarely honors Apache claims. But they did this time, Ayana added, her voice filled with wonder. We're rich, Cole, actually rich. The implications hit me like a thunderbolt. With that kind of money, the sisters could go anywhere, do anything. They could buy their own ranch, live in luxury, never depend on anyone again. They could leave me. The thought hit me harder than I expected. Over the past months, I'd grown more attached to Kaya and Ayana than I'd admitted to myself. They'd become my family, and the idea of losing them felt like facing another death. That's wonderful, I said, trying to keep the sadness out of my voice. You'll be able to start fresh wherever you want. Kaya looked at me sharply. What makes you think we want to go anywhere? Well, with that kind of money you could have anything. A big house in San Francisco, travel to Europe, whatever you want. And leave you? Ayana asked. Leave our home? This isn't really your home. You just ended up here by accident. No, Kaya said firmly. We didn't end up here by accident. We ended up here because someone cared enough to save us when no one else would. Because someone offered us love when the world had shown us only cruelty. But now you have choices, real choices. You're right, Kaya said, standing up. We do have choices. And I choose to stay here with the man I love. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Love. She'd said she loved me. Kaya, I love you, Cole. I've been trying to deny it, trying to convince myself it was just gratitude or dependence. But it's not. I love your kindness, your strength, your wounded heart that still finds room for others. I love the way you treat my sister like she's precious. I love the man you've become. Ayana was smiling through her tears. And I love having a big brother who protects us and makes us feel safe. Why would we want to leave that? I felt my own eyes filling with tears. Are you sure? Really sure? Because once you stay, once we build this life together, I don't think I could survive losing you again. Then don't lose us, Kaya said, stepping closer. Marry me, Cole Coleman. Make this family official. I dreamed of this moment but never believed it could be real. You want to marry me, even with everything I've done, everything I've been, especially because of everything you've been. Your past made you the man who could save us. Your pain made you understand ours. I looked at these two incredible women who had brought light back into my dark world, and I made the easiest decision of my life. Yes, I said, pulling Kaya into my arms. Yes, I'll marry you. Both of you can stay here forever if you want. Actually, Ayana said with a mischievous smile, we have a better idea. What's that? We want to use the money to expand the ranch, buy more land, build a bigger house, create something that can support not just us, but other people who need help. What do you mean? Kaya's eyes were shining with excitement. A place for Apache people who have nowhere else to go. A working ranch that can provide jobs and homes for those who've lost everything. A bridge between our worlds. The vision she painted was beautiful and ambitious. That would be dangerous. A lot of people wouldn't like it. Then we'll change their minds, Ayana said confidently. One person at a time, just like you changed ours. 6 months later, on a crisp October morning, Kaya and I were married in the valley below the Red Cliffs. Chief Nightwind performed the Apache ceremony, while Doc Franklin handled the legal requirements. The guest list was small but meaningful. Rosa and her family, a few neighboring ranchers who'd come to respect our unusual household, and several Apache families who'd already come to work on our expanded ranch. As I watched Kaya walking toward me in her white dress, with Ayana serving as her maid of honor and surrogate daughter, I marveled at how completely my life had changed. A year ago, I'd been a bitter, lonely man, waiting to die. Now, I was surrounded by family, love, and purpose. Do you take this woman to be your wife? Doc Franklin asked. I do, I said, looking into Kaya's beautiful dark eyes. And do you take this man to be your husband, to love and honor in the traditions of both your peoples? I do, Kaya replied, her voice strong and clear. As we kissed to seal our union, I heard cheering from our guests and felt Ayana's hand squeeze my arm. This was what family felt like. This was what home meant. That evening, as we celebrated under the stars, Chief Nightwind pulled me aside. You have given my nieces something precious, he said. Not just safety or comfort, but the chance to heal and grow. In return, they have given you the same gift. Yes, they have. The road ahead won't be easy. There will be those who oppose what you're building here. I know, but we'll face it together. Yes, the old chief smiled. Together. That is the Apache way, and it is becoming the Coleman way as well. As the celebration continued around us, I stood with my wife and sister-in-law, looking out at the ranch we were building together. We'd started with an act of rescue, a moment of compassion in a world too often ruled by cruelty. Now we were creating something that could outlast all of us, a place where love triumphed over hatred, where different peoples could live and work together in harmony. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I rode into Tombstone that day 7 months ago. It was better. It was a life worth living, worth protecting, worth passing on to future generations. And it had all started with 3 simple words: I'm taking you home. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with a single step of faith. Sometimes family isn't born but chosen. And sometimes the greatest victories come not from conquering others, but from opening your heart to let others conquer you. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey of redemption and love on the Arizona frontier. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what you thought of Cole's transformation from bitter soldier to loving family man. Have you ever taken a risk to help a stranger? Share your story below and hit that notification bell for more inspiring Western tales of courage and compassion.